cannot simply go wrong, it will anyway. If you will perceive there are 4 possible ways things can go wrong and circumvent all 4, a 5th way will appear and develop. Left to themselves, things go from bad to worse. If everything seems to be going well, you've obviously overlooked something. Nature always sides with the hidden flaw. It's impossible to make anything foolproof because fools are ingenious. Whenever you set out to do something, something else must be done first. Every solution breeds new problems. If anything can't go wrong on its own, someone will make it go wrong, and then a whole bunch of corollaries. And there's actually college classes that have just played up on these. And this is my favorite corollary. This is Stewart's corollary to Murphy's Law. Murphy's Law may be delayed or suspended for an indefinite period of time, provided that such a delay or suspension will result in a greater catastrophe at a later date. And you read something like that and you think, it's kind of funny. I think there ought to be a mechanics law. And the mechanics law is this. When your car is broken and you take it to the mechanic, it will appear to be perfect. Have you ever had that experience? You're driving in your car, you hear this rumbling sound, it's not working right, and you think, I need to take that into the shop. And in the morning, you're driving it in, everything on your car, not just the thing you're dealing with, but every problem you've ever had, all of a sudden fixes itself on the way to the mechanic. And the mechanic looks at you later and says, honestly, I can't find anything wrong with your car. And the moment you drive it away from the mechanic, it begins to fall apart again. I think it should be the mechanic's law. And I think probably you start thinking about that. It's kind of like white coat syndrome in reverse. You know what white coat syndrome is? It's where people get sicker when they're around doctors than they actually are. I think a car works better when it's in the shop. And I think when we evaluate anything, it just kind of seems that way. And probably if we're looking at the Christian family, at our Christian homes, we need measuring tools, assessing tools to help us truly assess how our families are doing. How is my family doing? What measuring tool can I use to assess the strength of my family? And I think I've come up with 3 questions we could ask ourselves to help with that assessment. First, are we listening to each other? Second, are we being honest with each other? And third, are we loving one another? I think communication is important. You read a lot about communication, even in the secular world. They talk about the importance of communication in the family. We need to listen to each other. Honesty is also important. A strong Christian family is impossible if there is a lack of integrity, a lack of honesty in the home. A number of years ago, I heard a story about a family that I don't know them very well. I know them well enough to say hello. And this family doesn't live in this state, and I've just known them most of my life. The married couple, are maybe 10 to 12 years older than I am, something like that. They're older. You get to a certain age, older is relative, right? So they're in that relatively older age, that kind of nefarious, hard to determine age. And their whole life, it came to find out, was a lie. Everything about them that people thought they knew was untrue. And what was revealed through a series of incidents is that there was a major problem in their home, and nobody knew about it. Nobody was aware about it. It was just there, and it had been there for decades and just festered. And finally, it completely came out. The whole thing began to fall apart. And thank the Lord, after much prayer and counseling with pastors, the family was restored. But for a while, it seemed apparently that this family was going to completely fall apart. If you are going to have a successful Christian home, you need a house guided by wisdom, and personal honesty and integrity has to be an important part of that house. You cannot hide the sin, the fractured relationships, the broken promises, without eventually all of it coming to the surface. eventually everyone will find out. And I'll tell you where you find out about it the most is when your children grow up old enough to start talking, or old enough where they begin to leave the house and make decisions on their own, and now their decisions they're making are completely against what you've seemingly been teaching them. And so what I want to share with you tonight is this second tool of assessment, the importance of honesty in the home. And let's read Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 3. The integrity of the upright shall guide them, but the perverseness of transgressors shall destroy them. Christians are depicted in this verse as the opposites of non-Christians. Look at the text. God's people are labeled by a term in the first phrase. What's the term? They are called what? They are called upright. The integrity of the upright shall guide them. And this term refers to the ethical way in which someone conducts his life. And it really fits well in with verse 1, because if you go back to verse 1, you'll see a question about business ethics. A false balance is abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. God is keenly interested in people being honest in their commercial activities. This is specifically referring to the rocks people used as the way they would balance things, they would weigh things to determine their value or to fix a price. A false balance would be achieved by using a marker that was incorrect. They would mark the rock, instead of weighing a certain amount, they would mark the rock differently so that you wouldn't know how much the rock actually weighed if they were using rocks. Later, they had scales, and they would use those scales. They would shorten one of the arms, even ever so slightly. One arm shorter throws the entire scale off. We pay a price per ounce. By the way, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but sometimes you go into a store and they have the price, and you think that if I buy a smaller amount of something, the price per ounce is going to be higher. But I've noticed, because retailers know that people generally can't do math in their head, that sometimes buying the larger amount doesn't save you any money. And there have been some times where buying the larger amount actually cost more money than buying a smaller amount. I would have been better off buying multiple units of a smaller item than one unit of a big item, which I would always rather do, of course. I mean, in almost every case. And it's just because they know they can do that. People just think there's more milk in this jug, it's going to be less per ounce than the smaller jugs. And that's kind of a parallel to what's going on here. They're using a false weight, and because of that, they're able to cheat somebody out of something that they have, their money. And so God says he hates a false balance, but he loves a just weight. And so that emphasis in verse 1 is on honesty. In fact, if you look down at verse 5, there's this sense of someone having right dealings with others. The righteousness of the perfect shall direct his way, but the wicked shall fall by his own wickedness. The righteousness of the upright shall deliver them, but transgressors shall be taken in their own naughtiness. That same theme now is emerging. God loves people who do things right, who follow him, who walk down the right road, who are protected against the trap of sin because they are doing things right. And Solomon is not making you a promise that if you live close to God, you'll never have any difficulties. He's just saying, as we would say, honesty is the best policy. It's kind of a proverb that we use. He's just simply saying that as he observes life, that it seems to him that people who are honest and have integrity in their dealings, that God loves those people, that God blesses those people, and he doesn't bless those who are dishonest, those who lack integrity. Now, throughout the Old Testament, this word, this term, upright, is always used to emphasize good behavior. It's a term that talks about how people can please God. In Exodus 15, verse 26, it says to do that which is right. To be upright is to do that which is right. In Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 18, to do that which is right and good in the sight of the Lord. To be upright is to do right, and to do right is that which pleases God. This is the term, by the way, that the writers, the historians of Israel, used to describe the good kings. You remember the good kings, you have bad kings, and the bad kings, those who did not do which was right in the sight of the Lord. The good kings were those who did that which was right in the sight of the Lord. David, for example, was said to be upright in 1 Samuel 29, verse 6. Asa was said to do good and right in 2 Chronicles 14 and verse 2. Joash was said to do that which was right in 2 Chronicles 24, verse 2. And so you have this idea of being upright. That's what pleases God. That's what we all should want to be. We all want to be the upright. But on the flip side, turn that coin over, and what you have are unbelievers described as transgressors. You see that in the verse. But the perverseness of transgressors. So you have the upright, those who are following Christ, those who are God's people, and you have the transgressors, those who are not upright. Though this term means those who are crooked and deceitful. And isn't it interesting that the term God uses to describe unbelievers as the opposite of those who are following Him is a term that has the idea of doing something that is dishonest. Dishonesty is a virtue or a lack of virtue. It's a quality that characterizes unbelievers. Unbelievers are dishonest people. And I think the book of Revelation says that all liars will have their place in the lake of fire. So that quality of lying, of dishonesty, that's a quality that really describes unbelievers. And it can refer to false or lying behavior, dealing with people treacherously, a covert act, covering up a false action. Or in Judges 9, talking about the men of Shechem, dealing treacherously, dealing with a deceitful intent with Abimelech. Do you know a good way to think about this? It's unfaithfulness. It's being unfaithful. And we think of these transgressors as people who do not keep their word. They're dishonest. They can't be trusted. He says they deal perversely. Do you see that in the phrase? See it again, second phrase of the verse. But the perverseness of these crooked and deceitful people, they twist the truth. They distort the facts for their own benefit. I'm going to tell you something. We live in a world that is filled with this. You see it in politics. I'll just tell you, I read the news now, and I read widely. I read conservative news, I read liberal news, I read British news, I read Turkish news. I just read as widely as I can. I try to see every side. I'm trying to get as good a picture as I can. I listen on the radio to conservative people. I listen to NPR. I'm listening to all different sides. And I come out sometimes and go, I don't have any idea who I can believe. You listen to people talk, and you go, that seems right. And then you hear somebody else talking, go, wait a minute, now that first person didn't tell me that. And I just go, I'm not sure who I can believe. Because so many people now who have a voice in our society twist the truth. They twist and distort the facts. And it's not just in politics and in the news. You see it in businesses. I read a story this afternoon that just blew me away. I guess it could be true. I hope it's not true. I think it probably is true. About a man, a retiree in Michigan, who bought a house, and because of a miscalculation of his taxes, he owed $8 more than he paid. The county in which he lived took his house, sold it at auction, didn't give him the proceeds of the sale. They have a law that allows them to keep all of the proceeds. And I read that and went, well, that's just terrible. That's evil. That's wicked. Here's this older gentleman who is living on a fixed income, and they basically just stole his house for $8. And they said, well, we tried to get a hold of him. And I'm sure that's true. I'm sure there are things that he could have done differently. But you read a story like that and go, what kind of world do we live in? It's a world where dishonesty and a distorting of the truth just has the way people operate. And if you think that kind of thing doesn't happen in big businesses or in government, it happens all the time. One of the companies that I sometimes used to do business with before I had diabetes, before I knew it anyway, was Nestle. You can buy chocolate bar, love that. Well, you know Nestle went into certain villages in Africa. They took the baby formula, they sold it to the ladies in the villages for next to nothing. This happened about 10 or 15 years ago. They sold it for next to nothing. They waited until the ladies could no longer produce their own milk. And then they went back and raised the price up so that they couldn't actually even pay for it. They had to go beg, borrow, steal in order to be able to buy food to feed their infants. That is evil and wicked. That's what the Bible's talking about right here. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's everywhere. And it's not with a political party or with even a political ideology. It's just everywhere. The perverseness of the transgressors is what he's talking about. And I would say for you, this is something I don't want in your family. I don't want it in my family. I think we can all agree that's not what we want. We want a home, a family that has integrity and honesty. And just as Christians are depicted as the opposites of non-Christians, the reason for that depiction is that they are guided by a different set of values. Notice, here's my second thought. Secondly, Christians function according to personal integrity. That's how we ought to be. That's who we should be. We should be honest people. Or as the Apostle Paul, when he's talking in Ephesians 4 about how Christians should be different than they were before they got saved. The Gentiles, the unbelievers, he said, they are actually living in the emptiness of their mind. They're just evil and wicked. They're sinful. Their minds aren't capable of coming to the truth. But he said we should be different from that. And then he goes into this long thing like, instead of stealing, we should work so that we can give. And instead of being bitter and angry, we should be forgiving. And one of the things he says is instead of lying, we should tell the truth. There ought to be an honesty. There ought to be integrity in the Christian home. Believers are those who are to have integrity. Look back at the beginning of the verse. The integrity of the upright. This is the idea of being innocent. I find it really interesting. This word integrity is the way God described Job to Satan. Do you remember that story? Here's Job. He's a wealthy man. He's got a big family. He's got a big business. He's very wealthy. And he's very healthy. And Satan comes in to what's called the divine council, where the sons of God, the angels, came and presented themselves to God. It's kind of this idea of there's this time where angels come in and talk to God in heaven. And Satan comes in with them, and God sees Satan and says, "Hey, Satan, have you considered my servant Job?" And what's very interesting, by the way, it's God that brings Satan's attention to Job, not Satan to God. God says, "Have you considered Job?" And Satan goes, "Oh, you know what? Job's just like everybody else." And God says, "No, Job is different. Job is one of mine. He's different." And the story is very interesting because he says to Job, or says to Satan, "You can take away Job's money, and you can take away Job's family," which he does. And then after another conversation, when Job still doesn't sin, he says, "Okay, you can take away Job's health." But the way he describes Job the first time and the second time is that Job is a man of integrity. He's an innocent man. This is a way that God describes Job. It's also a way that God describes David. He says of David, he was a man who walked after God's own heart in honesty of heart. 1 Kings chapter 9. And it's interesting when you begin doing a study of this word, you'll find that David prayed in his integrity. He says, "Okay, God, I'm praying to you. I'm bringing my prayer. You know that I have an honest heart in Psalm 25, verse 21. David declared that this was his manner of living in Psalm 26, verse 1, and then later in verse 11. And David counted on his integrity in terms of God's blessing in Psalm 41 and verse 12. I don't mean David was perfect. We know he wasn't perfect. We know David sinned. We even know that David lied in covering up his sin. He sinned spectacularly. But the general course of David's life was that he lived a life of integrity. The integrity of the upright. That's what God is talking about. And when it comes to a Christian home, that's who we should be. We should put away lying. We need to put away dishonesty. We need to speak the truth to our neighbors, but even the neighbors who are closest to us, which is the people who live under the same roof. We need to have integrity in our homes. This word is used in a moral sense, meaning there's no intention to lead someone to do wrong. You know, sometimes you can lie by accident. I don't mean lie in the moral sense. I don't mean you're actually trying to lie. You tell somebody what you believe to be true, and it's false. Ethicists would call it a lie, but I would say you didn't intend to lie. This is stressing the idea of something that is morally justifiable. You say, well, I told you that because at the time that's what I thought was true. It's not evil. There wasn't a wicked intent. I'm innocent. And that kind of idea is in the word. Solomon writes that honesty is part of living uprightly before others. Let me say it this way. Do you want an honest leader in government or a dishonest leader? You know, you're pulling the lever, you're pulling the vote. You want honesty or dishonesty? Do you want an honest policeman or a dishonest policeman when he pulls you over? Honesty or dishonesty? How many's going to vote for dishonesty? You know, it would be great if when he's writing up the ticket, he lies about everything I did. Wouldn't that be just great? What about a grocer? Do you want an honest grocer or a dishonest grocer? I can't even imagine how awful it would be if your grocery store was trying purposely to lie to you. Oh, you can eat this ham. Sure. Do you want an honest retailer or a dishonest retailer? Do you want an honest car dealer or a dishonest car dealer? Do you want an honest pastor or an honest deacon or a dishonest pastor, a dishonest deacon? What about a builder? Would it be good? You know, you're going to build a house, you go and hire a contractor, you clear the land, the contractor comes in, and you don't know this, but he's really a dishonest guy, and he builds your house, and he uses all cheap materials. He does it in a bad way all the time, saying, you can trust me. Is that what you think you would want? It'd be really great if I had a dishonest builder. You want a dishonest builder or an honest one? What about an IT computer repairman? You know, your computer goes out on the fritz, you don't know how to repair it. Now, some of you think, it doesn't matter, I can repair mine. So just put in a different thing you can't do, okay? All right. I'm just thinking of things I can't do. So do you want somebody who's honest in dealing with you there or somebody who's dishonest in that? Well, what about all of you people who like sports? Do you like an honest referee or a dishonest referee? Which do you want? Your children are out playing Little League Baseball and the umpire is dishonest. He's playing for the other team. He's making it so the other team wins. You want an honest one or a dishonest one? How do you feel about that? What about then, let's just bring it down to home then. What about your wife, men? You want an honest wife or a dishonest wife? You want, ladies, an honest husband or dishonest husband? Do you enjoy it, mom and dad, when your children lie to you? Is that something you celebrate in your home or something you don't want in your home? Ultimately, I would say this. We all want honesty. We all want honesty. Shouldn't we want to be honest? Isn't that something we should want for ourselves? I don't want to be duplicitous. I don't want to have a dark side. I don't want to have something about me that I keep hidden and secretive. It doesn't mean I'm going to go and bring every aspect of every sin I've ever committed and just throw it up onto people. I heard this really kind of sad but funny story of a freshman in college. He was, so what is he, 18 years old. And he was sitting in chapel one day at the Christian college, and the preacher was talking about how when you confess your sins, when you repent of sin, you need to go to the person you've offended and you need to confess your sin to that person. This guy had been having the wrong kind of thoughts about a freshman girl who had no idea at all. And he went and pulled her aside in the middle of the college campus and confessed his horrible thoughts that he'd been having to her, and scared her half to death. She thinks now that she has a stalker, and runs off to the administration, and they pull him in, and he says, in all honesty, he said, I thought I was doing the right thing. And they had to kind of explain, okay, it's good that you're repenting of that, but you didn't need to tell her, all right? So I'm not saying bring everything and just let the whole church, don't go and post it on Slack tonight, okay? Don't do that. But I do think it's important for all of us to say, I want to be honest. I want to be genuine. I want to be real. I want to be authentic. I don't want to be fake. The integrity of the upright, notice the next phrase, guides them. It's my guide. It's my GPS for life. It gets me through. This is the idea of someone leading someone else along a path. It's the scout that goes ahead of the troops and says, this is the way we should go. I was reading about the man who wrote the book Ben-Hur. He was a general in the Union Army during the American Civil War. And at the Battle of Shiloh, he was actually marched his entire army all over that entire area except to where he should be. He got so lost, he got so completely turned around that by the time he figured out where he was, and General Grant, I think it was, figured out where he was, the battle was pretty much over for the day. And what people have discovered, historians, after all of this, is that if he simply knew where he was actually behind the Southern Army. And if he had just turned and marched his army just 2 miles in a northerly direction, the entire Battle of Shiloh would have been a wipeout for the Union Army. They would have just crushed the South. It may have ended the war prematurely. It was that serious of a mistake because he didn't know where he was. A man of integrity, a man of honesty is guided. He is led down the path by that integrity. It's that governing thing. It governs his life. It's what leads his troops in battle. It describes Solomon's war operations, that which guides. And it can be thought of bringing or bestowing something. Here's what Solomon is saying. Do you know what the secret of success is? It's honesty. That's the secret. That's what guides you. That's what leads you. That's what directs your life. But on the flip side again, just as believers are called upright, who by integrity are being led in a direction that pleases God, so the unbelievers are going in a perverse path to their own destruction. Families are ruined by dishonesty in the home. Your family may be being ruined if you are allowing dishonesty and a lack of integrity in your home. He says they're destroyed by their sin. This is to be brought to ruin. It's like an ancient army conquering a city. The lack of integrity, Solomon says, is their undoing. It's what rips you apart. So let me make some applications. First, husbands. Are you being honest with your wife? Are you honest with her? Does she really know you? Are you different when you're away from her? Is there kind of you and then you point one and you point two, depending on who you're with? When you're traveling, can she trust you? I don't want to bring distrust into your marriage. I'm not encouraging her to distrust you. I'm asking you if you think she can trust you. Do you believe that you are honest and have integrity, and she can trust you rightly? Can she trust you while you're traveling? Let me ask you something, men. If you're a father, are you being honest with your children? Are you being real with your children? Do you have two sets of facts? This is what we tell the kids. This is what is real, and they're not really the same. I don't mean you dump on children all the pressures of your life. I'm not saying that. But are you being honest with them? I think that this is one of those areas where children at some point realize, Mom's and Dad, they're not telling me the truth. They figure it out. They're often very intuitive, and they know you better than you think they do. And at some point in life, they keep growing. I mean, they don't stay young forever. They grow up to a certain age, and they'll figure it out. If you're being dishonest, they will know, and they will learn. Are you a straight shooter with your children? What about you, ladies, wives? Are you honest with your husband? Are you sharing with him how you really feel, your hopes, your desires, your dreams, your thoughts? Or do you keep those all bottled up inside? Again, I'm not encouraging you to go and just dump on him every little thing that's going on in your heart. But if you keep it separate from him so that he doesn't know, and then later in life you go, see, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. I will tell you, that's on you, not on him. Long before I married my wife, even met her, I was dating a young lady, and I liked her. As it goes when you're in high school, you like somebody, whatever level that's on, and maybe our freshman year of college together, until one day I apparently did something that made her very angry, and I have no idea to this day what it was. I have no idea. And in the middle of a fight of some sort, she said to me, "You know what you did." And I said to her, "I don't know. You need to tell me. I don't know what I did." She says, "No, you know what you did." And that was the end of it. She would never tell me. And I went home and thought to myself, well, if this is how it's going to be, I don't see how I could have any future with this person. Now, she's gone off and married another guy, and I hope that they figured that out, right? But ladies, if you're not being honest with your husbands, how do you expect him to know? You say, well, he should be more sensitive to my feelings. Okay, that's probably true, but remember, he's from Mars. He's a Martian. He's not from Earth. He's built insensitively. So you need to be aware of that and be honest with him. You need to be honest, moms, with your children. You need to tell them about how life really is. You need to, often, ladies, you're with them a lot more than dad is. You need to be the one you have to be honest. You can't mislead them. You can't paint for them always the rosy picture. I'm not saying, again, you dump everything on your kids, but you ought to be careful in what you say so you don't cause them to think that things are much better than they really are. You need to be honest with them. I've had, in 20-something years of serving the Lord and pastoral type of ministries, I've had people approach me, and I find out from children that their parents have been lying to them for years about different family things, just completely telling them falsehoods. And the children are now grown, they're college age or even older, and they're just angry at their parents. And I think, moms, dads, are you being honest with your kids? Are you telling them the truth? Are you living integrity in front of them? Children. And you thought, maybe I was going to get away from this. Kids, are you being honest with your parents? Are you hiding things from them? Do you know, by the way, do you know where they look? They look under your mattress. When you hide things under your mattress, you think no one will ever look there. I was preaching at a Christian high school, probably 20 years ago. And I mentioned to the Christian high school, I said, you teenagers, you're hiding things under your mattress your mom and dad know. And I watched the faces of all of these kids go, how does he know? And I told them, I know because I hid things under my mattress and my parents found it. Are you being honest with your parents? Or are you hiding things from them? If you're not being honest with them and you don't have the kind of integrity that you should have, that's on you. God calls you to be obedient to your parents. Listen, it's wrong to hide from them and to be sneaky around them. I've heard funny stories about family members, people in my family, an extended family, who, in one young lady's case, would leave the house wearing one set of clothes and get to school and go in the bathroom and change clothes because she wanted to wear something her parents knew she wasn't allowed to wear. In another case, another family member would have magazines of certain kind that weren't evil, but knew mom and dad didn't want her to look at those and would keep those hidden away. And I can tell you that I thought my mom didn't know, but I had a little bucket outside my window, and I would, in the middle of the night, sneak out of the house when I was 17 to go run. It wasn't doing anything evil, truly, but it was just a run. But I knew my parents wouldn't want me to do that, so if I'd left by the front door, they'd be angry, until my mom said to me one day, "Why is there a bucket outside your window?" And I went, "Oh, man, she found that out. I'm in trouble." It's just being sneaky and dishonest. And kids, you shouldn't be that way. You need to be honest with your parents, grandparents. And you're thinking, surely I was going to get left off. Because he's already dealt with all the parents, grandparents. Are you being honest with your grown children? Let me tell you where you're at. You're reaching end-of-life decisions. You're going to start reaching end-of-life decisions, and they're difficult. And do you know what I read about all the time? I read about senior adults who don't want to tell their children what's really going on. They don't want to be honest with their children. They don't want their children to be involved in decisions. And usually it's because the old adage is, if you change their diapers, then you know better, right? But I'm going to tell you something. You're going to get to an age where you're going to need their help. You will. Unless you die prematurely, and most of you probably won't, particularly with modern medicine, you're going to get to an age where you will need your children's help. Will you be honest with them, grandparents? Are you being honest with your children, with your grandchildren, and letting them know this is where things are at? This is where I am. And what about you single adults? You say, I'm single. I'm free from all of this. But are you willing to live an honest lifestyle? Are you willing to live a lifestyle of integrity? There ought to be honesty in your home. This is the evaluation tool. What I want you to do is I want you to leave this message, and I want you to actually think through the question. Am I being honest with my family members, with the people in my house, with the people who have my last name? Am I being honest with them, or am I being dishonest with them? Because let's look at the verse again. The integrity of the upright shall guide them, but the perverseness of transgressors shall destroy them. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this passage. Help us to be real